Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I'm Rosie Hicks, the CEO of the Australian Research Data Commons.
Thank you. Okay, so today we are talking about national data services and specifically talking about a draft that we've completed around a statement of work towards a renewed interest group for this topic. So could I please have 2 slides advanced? Excellent, thank you. So for today's meeting agenda, we'll start off with a report from the BOF session that we had at P22, and I'll talk about some of the activities that have gone on since then. Then we will turn things over to our colleague Francois Genova for a discussion of the draft National Data Services Statement of Work for the interest groups. And then after discussion, we will attempt to provide a summary of all of the findings and the actions and collate the next steps to continue this work. So if that sounds good, why don't we get started on the first slide? So there's quite a bit of history here that I think it's important to start off with to walk us through. So there was an interest group for national data services that existed in the RDA, started in 2016 and ending in 2019. And it was intended to be a network, a peer support mechanism, a means of exchanging ideas and information between national data service providers, users, interested parties, anyone really. And you can see the original charter is linked there on the slides. In the course of those conversations, I'm saying it like that because this does predate me, conversations I think moved more towards the concrete features or typology of what these things are, of national data services, and that led to the development of the Global Open Research Commons Interest Group and the Working Group, which of course was extremely successful and developed the international GORC model. And many years have passed, and really I think there has been a significant evolution of the national data services landscape since that time. And now, of course, we're also empowered by having the GORC model, I think both as a roadmap, as a frame of reference, something that we can point to that really helps to define what it is, or what we mean when we talk about national data services. So then that led into the BOF session at P22, where the conversation was essentially, is it time now with the success of GORC and the evolutionary changes in the landscape to reconvene the group so that we can have a forum for these kinds of conversations? Essentially to see whether there is interest. And so we brought together proposers from Australia, Canada, France, Japan, South Africa, as well as being joined by La Referencia. And it was a success. So it demonstrated that there is a wide diversity of NDSs in operation and also a willingness to renew this interest group to have this kind of a forum. So the positive outcomes of the P22 BOF led to the draft statement of work for the interest group. So it's a statement of work case for forming the group that we'll be discussing today. There was also a desire to branch out and reach out to other NDSs who may not have been involved in those initial renewal conversations. So for example, Finland, Germany, and the Netherlands. And then to propose the BOF we're having today, where we will discuss the draft statement of work. So unless there is further details or clarity or anything I missed from any of my co-chair or any of the other folks who've been involved, I think I will turn things over to Francois to lead us through the next part, and we can go to the next slide.
Thank you. Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So the idea now is to go through the statement of work, a possible statement of work, and to discuss the items we have begun to write in it. So it follows the template which is provided by the RDA for interest group statement of work. And you can find the template in the useful links in the note-taking document, if you are interested. Next slide, please. So the introduction of the case statement, which is now called statement of work, is why now, why in RDA? So I think Lee began to say a few words about that. The national data services are really a key component in the scientific data landscape in many countries. And there was this very significant evolution of the landscape in the recent years, of the national data services landscape in the recent years, with a number of new national data services established in a number of countries, and also a number of countries where there are thoughts about establishing something which could be a new national data service. Among the NDSs which were established during the last years, many of them have been involved in RDA through their staff who participated in RDA activities, in some cases from the very beginning or even before the beginning. And there is a contribution of some of them in the organizational assembly of the RDA. And there were also contributions to the GORC International Model Working Groups with presentations in the speaker series of the GORC International Model Working Group. Several of national data services were among the presenters and provided case studies for the international model. So we think, like the people who initially set up the initial national data service interest group, that RDA is a natural venue for the national data services to meet and also to discuss, to exchange about what they do, their organizations, their practices, and the challenges they face. So the high-level aims of this networking are to increase efficiency from the operators of national data services, to help the people who are willing to set up a new national data service, and also because of a wealth of activities in the RDA which are fully relevant to national data services, identify and liaise with the relevant RDA groups. The idea is that national data services can provide use cases and requirements to groups which are working in relevant domains. And also, the idea is to identify outputs which can be useful for the national data service operators. Next slide, please. So then we are asked to provide user scenarios, use cases, the use cases the interest group wishes to address. So there are several slides about that. And what is interesting is that when we check the initial charter of the initial group, it is also linked in the useful links of a note-taking document, if you're interested to look at it. We see that this proposal for a renewed interest group shares the same overarching goals as the initial incarnation of the interest group. So I think we can copy, and probably we will write in the statement of work that we copy elements from the initial IG's charter. This is what someone who is trying to set up a national data service can get from this interest group. So I will not read all the words, but you have them for reference. I hope to get funds. I want to allow my researchers to access national sky services. We want to participate in global initiatives. So what has been done elsewhere to do that? How can I learn from the others? And what services can we offer? can we leverage work elsewhere? Can we solve common issues jointly? So we see these are the questions people ask themselves when they begin this kind of work about what services can we fruitfully offer. I think we have elements coming from the GORC international model, of course, and this is why we want to liaise with them, and we have begun to liaise with them, and I think Vice Seiji is in the room. I think I saw you. Next slide, please. So there were, in the initial charter, a variety of suggested topics for discussion. Sorry. Okay. A question which is at the level of a governance of the national data services. Another question about which kind of services national data services can provide, technical and social challenges, and hopefully solutions, or at least best practices to face challenges. And also the relationship with the relevant regional global open research commons and specific thematic repositories. So this was a starting point which still makes sense, we think. And we asked during the BOF session in P22, we asked the participants to provide the use cases, the topics they would like to discuss. So there is overlapping, which is good. And we probably will put everything together to dealing with the overlaps in the proposed charter, the charter which will be submitted. So share strategic directions and challenges, share best practices. What we saw very well during the BOF session, and Lee addressed that already, there is a huge diversity in the existing national data services. So we would like to understand the diversity, learn from it, and build a common model. And this is again a place where we will talk with the GORC colleagues from the GORC groups. Again, discussion, the interaction between national data services and regional multinational initiatives. This is what we heard also from La Referencia during the BOF last time. There is in Europe, of course, we have the EOSC, there is the African Open Science Cloud also, and relationship and integration, possibly integration, but at least relationship with specific, and I think this means thematic repositories or institutional repositories. Next slide, please. So in the discussion before this BOF, we had the suggestion to go to a more granular level. Should the services be cross-cutting and provide domain-agnostic solutions? What are the best instruments to use? Open calls, infrastructural funds, and etc. So this has to do with governance again, but going in more details about governance. How do we listen to the users? How do we create services according to the needs? And what is the interplay with thematic infrastructure at the national level? So we find again, when we go to a more granular level, we see that all this makes sense, and there are directions which are shared about what this should do. So these directions, the people who have worked on the charter until now agree with them, and please add items and comments. I think you can add comments in the chat, but it's also good if you add items and comments in the collaborative note-taking document. Next slide, please. Are there comments here eventually? Or we go a bit further and we will get comments in the end maybe, so you see the whole picture. But please note your comments and questions, eventually note them in the chat so that we keep track of them. So the next item in the template for IG statement of work is the objectives. So I think we already discussed this in the previous slides. Networking with colleagues from all around the world, and we have begun in the preparation of a charter, embracing the diversity of an NDS landscape to understand it, learn from it for our own activities, and this was very clear during the BOF last time. And here we have explicitly the relationship with GORC. We would like to work on a GORC model of the national data services, which would encompass the diversity. And we discussed this already. One essential goal is to identify shared best practices, to identify relevant RDA groups with which we should establish a liaison, not could, should, and also to identify the relevant RDA recommendations and outputs, which could be useful for the national data services. The idea is also that the IG will liaise with the regional endeavors, and we think, and it was also discussed during the last BOF, in particular with contribution from La Referencia, the outcomes of this interest group will be useful for the regional endeavors in their relationship with their national services and national infrastructures. Next slide, please. So in the objective part of the template, we have to explain that we are unique in the RDA and to assess the possible overlaps. So here it's in this slide. No other RDA groups has these aims since the initial interest group, which is now historical, which has been historical for a while now. There is a possible question about overlap with GORC interest group. My understanding, and I think we have discussed with the GORC colleagues already, the GORC interest group addresses a wider community, the full community of commons, and its aim is not, the starting aim is not to enable networking about its constituents, but to understand what work is performed in the constituents. So we think it's fully complementary. And so liaison has been established from the last BOF with a GORC International Model Working Group, which is now moving to GORC 2, but we continue to talk together. And the next slide will show, I think, the collaboration with GORC, or it will come later. Can you show the next slide, please? Yes, now it's participation, and then the GORC will come later. So participation, the group membership is, of course, it's RDA. So the group membership is open to all people interested in the topic. It's open to all initiatives interested in the topic, but of course, in particular, to the colleagues and initiatives which manage a national data service or are planning to manage one. The idea is to publicize the proposal for this interest group for the regional assembly, through the organizational assembly. It's not written, but it's also relevant. And also to the GORC group lists, because many of the people who could be interested are, of course, participating in the GORC groups. Next slide. And don't forget to share your questions in the chat, please. Outcomes. So, of course, this is only the beginning. So it's what we think at this starting point, and this can evolve as usual. When an interest group begins, it has to understand whether the strategy has to evolve. But the starting point, again, I have said that I don't know how many times, sharing of knowledge and the identification of good practices. So regular meetings with presentations from national data services along a predefined template encompassing the NDS context, governance activities, and identification of good practices. Identification of relevant RDA groups and recommendations and outputs. So this could lead to an output from this interest group on RDA value for national data services, which there is a collection of RDA value for something, documents, which is seen on the opening web page of the RDA, I think now. And so it could be an interesting contribution to this collection. So we still have to work on that. For the moment, it's a possibility, and we have to understand whether it makes sense to produce the document. And it's something we will do when we have browsed the list of active RDA groups. And then, again, work on a profile of the national data services using the GORC international model, version 1.1. And this should be tackled in collaboration with the GORC working group, which will be soon proposed, which is GORC 2, and I will come to that in the next slide. There are elements for that in the collection of NDS presentations, and this provides element to work on the profile. The starting point is the GORC international model version 1.1, but there was a discussion in the GORC session 2 days ago, and this produced the results of what I understand from this discussion is in the next slide, please. So not the next one. We have to discuss the timeline because of a template. Identification of volunteers to work on the different tasks, persons in charge of the different tasks, start of the tasks with regular meetings, an initial list after 9 months, production or not of RDA value month 10, and then the scheduling of a task dealing with the modeling has to be established in collaboration with the GORC IG. So I announced a slide on GORC, and I hope it's the next one, because there are elements of their timeline in it. So can we get the next slide, please? Yes. So at last, this is the slide about the liaison with the GORC interest group working group. And Seiji, you are very welcome to comment if you have comments about what I understood about what we can do. So there was a GORC session on Tuesday, and there is a link to the meeting slides in the slide. It was organized by the GORC interest group and the GORC International Model Working Group, and it was the last session of the GORC International Model Working Group. There was a discussion of a proposal for GORC 2 working group, and the first item in the statement of work is implementation of a model. A first step would be to confirm types of comments, and then you see that the National Data Services Commons profile appears as a second step, and profile of specific existing commons, which, if I understand fully, is taking into account the presentations which were made during the speakers session of the GORC model in working group. So I will not repeat about the statement about diversity, and the suggestion I made during the GORC session was to use the profiles of existing commons relevant to national data services as input, to the general NDS profile. The GORC working group timeline would be to start early in 2025. So we will see how all these things fit, because we also have to prepare and propose a charter if it's the outcome of this specific meeting today. But we can begin to work with the GORC colleagues even before our own group starts, of course. Next slide, please. So the potential group members, currently we have the colleagues who we have been talking with to prepare the charter, National Data Services, Regional Network, La Referencia. And on the next slide, next slide, please. Please join. You can show up in the meeting notes. There is a place for you to write up your national data service in the meeting notes. And there is also, of course, a call for individuals to participate, interested in participating in the future activities. And this is also possible. You can join, yes, the GORC document, Nathalie, is available from the program, but it's here also now. And so we will also have to work on co-chairpersonship, which has to be from 3 continents. So you have seen that we had 5 continents represented in the initial group, and it was what we set up to have a global representation from the start. Colleagues are beginning to join, and so the doors are fully open if you are willing to join us and to participate. I think in the note-taking document, you can indicate you are interested in participating in the group. And you can also indicate whether you are interested to participate in some of the activities which were described in the previous slides. So I think it's the end of this. Can you show the next slide, please? Yes. So now it's time for discussion. Maybe Seiji, you can comment if you are in the room.
So I'll be running with the microphone here and hopefully injecting something into the discussion this morning. But look, I think you've been put on the spot, CJ. Are you ready for this? All right, so over to you. But I would actually like to flavour the question a little bit myself. I think that we have a great opportunity this morning, both to look at the relationship with the GORC, but I'm also aware that we had a BOF yesterday, and we were looking at very much at the cross-domain collaboration, but it was also at the national data services level as well. So already we have 3 groups that we're looking at how we bring this together. And I think when it comes to the GORC considerations, I'm really interested in what you would see as necessary for really smooth operation between the 2 activities. God, you look like you're caught in the headlights.
Can you just comment, the sound is weak from the mic, heard from here. So I don't know if you can do something in the room to...
What about now, Francois?
It's much better, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so in terms of how do we see the work progressing smoothly with the liaison between this interest group and the GORC2 working group / interest group, it's something that we're looking at with multiple groups is how do we have a liaison task group between them. Ideally, what I'd like to see is at least two, preferably more dedicated people from each group working together on creating versions of what this National Data Services profile would look like, bringing it to joint sessions between our groups, and then revision from the groups together. This was a pretty successful way that we ran revisions of the GORC model originally. And that's kind of how I'm seeing it at first. But Francois also pointed out that we've got profiles already of national common services that are waiting in the wings. And so some of this work to develop a general model will need to happen in parallel as we verify and confirm those profiles. And so we first need to figure out who in the GORC working group will formalize and verify those profiles, go back to our speakers, and make sure that they are accurate. And then that'll feed into this task group that I'm talking about, that'll liaison between them. So my ideal plan and the timeline I tried to show in our session was, I'm hoping that we'll have some folks verifying these national commons profiles that are about specific people or specific infrastructures while we're starting up this liaison task group and figuring out who's doing what. That's how I would see it working together. So a mixture of one task group across two of the groups, and then iterative review from the two groups in joint sessions. So will take some coordination for sure, even just to schedule those meetings. But that was my initial idea of how this could work, but very open to how we might be able to accelerate that or use different methods as well.
The comment I can make here is that it worked very well to have a task group and to have regular discussions about the task group outcome. Was, as you said, very successful in establishing the GORC model. So we can try to mimic that for that one, to take it as a subset of your next work.
Okay, so in the same vein, how's that, Francois? It might be me, not the microphone. In the same vein, are there other groups that we should be thinking about here as well? What have we missed? And I've got Lee monitoring the online chat there as well. So we're comfortable that we're...
I mean, obviously, there's a natural link to the Funders Forum group, and we're talking about in the Funders Forum about getting the Funders Forum interest group generated again. And actually, there's a lot of obviously links to of interest across those two groups as well. So, and with GORC and with all the other groups you mentioned as well.
Thank you. I think the opportunity to reinvigorate those discussions with the funders right now is something of enormous importance to us to drive uptake of some of the initiatives we've got, and not to let an opportunity pass. I'm just going to put a plug in for persistent identifiers there, and how we can get support from the funders to drive uptake across the community. So that's fantastic. And we all know that RAID is the best thing since sliced bread. Keith.
On that initiative to bring a Funders Forum interest group together, how far are you down that track? And are there any lessons learned for this interest group on how you're forming it, how you're thinking about membership, how you're thinking about organizing discussions? Because I could see I'm not saying these groups are separate, because there's different people in each of the groups, but I was just wondering if there's any lessons learned there from that, or any tricks we can use and say, oh, the way we're setting up this NDS group could be similar to the Funders Forum interest group.
We should have a long dialogue, Keith, on this one. The step count will go right through the roof. No, that's a great question. So we do have an interest group, and actually Francoise was instrumental in helping us write the charter for that. So I'm not surprised to see she's instrumental here as well. And one of the things that group has done is looked for natural partners on particular topics. So we had a series of meetings with publishers around joint series of interests. And so we haven't tried to work alone, but we've tried to bring what we created to have a venue so that funders could come and speak to the broader community about particular funder interests, but have that interaction that it doesn't always take place in some of these meetings with funders and the broader community. I mean, the challenge that we faced is probably the challenge that a lot of groups face, is continuing the momentum when different people come and go, and thinking about how you refresh the leadership of these groups and keep the energy behind them between meetings is always challenging. That's not unique to us or this group, but I think it's across all of the groups at RDA.
Okay then, so one of the things that I'm quite interested to see is who here is with a national data service, and then would you be prepared to make a comment about where you're from, et cetera, et cetera. And if we were to do this alphabetically, and I'll do it to get the ball rolling, the Australians are here in force. So put your hand up if you are from the Australian Research Data Commons. So we've got 450. I think that's a really low hand, Liv. Okay, right, for your sins, just a comment about us then.
Yes, I'm Liv from the Australian Research Data Commons. We are a national data service in ourselves, and we run a number of services and infrastructure for researchers across Australia. And we also operate through our thematic research data commons, so planet, HAS and Indigenous, and also people. Yeah.
I guess, you can have a contribution from France, which is in the distance, eventually.
Hang on, we've got Ming. We've got Australia, so I'm going to go on from Australia. All right, and I'll come back to you there. Francois, haven't quite got to France yet. On my list next, the Canadian representative. So we have Lee, and then Natalie. I don't know if you want to say something there as well.
Sure, yes. Hello again, with the Digital Research Alliance of Canada. So we're responsible for coordinating and delivering national digital research infrastructure services to Canadian researchers, which includes national data services. As a representative of an NDS, I see a great need for a forum like this. It's amazing that we have GORC, so important to have frameworks and models that are extremely well vetted and of very high quality for us to follow. And I think the RDA in particular is the perfect place for an interest group like forum to have conversations among the different NDSs, because I think it's really important for us to understand implementation. So it's great to see the framework, what could be, as CG likes to call the salad of national data services. But as somebody who's responsible, or with an organization responsible for delivering on these services, I'm very interested to see what they actually look like in practice, how they differ, how they work together. They're not just a set of disparate services. Oftentimes when you think about an NDS, what you assume is that there is interoperability among these different services. I'd like to understand things like funding models, staffing models. Are these centralized teams? Are these distributed? And really, I think all of these kinds of questions can be well addressed by a forum like this. So I'm very happy to see it go forward.
And Natalie, still.
Yeah, first I'll say bonjour, Françoise. Good to see you. I'll turn around. So I'm Natalie Harrer with the Canadian Research Data Centre Network. My first question was going to be, do we have a very clear definition of what constitutes a national data service? But I'll just put us in there for now. So we're a research infrastructure for social sciences and population health studies. And we make statistical microdata available to researchers across the country. So I'm interested to see, how this goes forward, and I think also it could provide a forum every once in a while for national data services of different sizes and purposes within a country to speak, because I think I see Lee more at RDA than I see him in Canada. So my only other thought was, in talking about other groups, you said you wanted to put in a plug for PIDs, but you didn't specifically say, I don't think, the National PID Services Strategies Group, because that's really key. I mean, that, you know, if there's any connection to be made in there, I think those are they. I just scanned all the working groups and interest groups, so that's the only one I came up with.
Thanks, Natalie. That's an important point, and I'm pretty sure that's where Ming was going to take me there as well. Now, continuing on our list, and this is actually really helpful for me because I don't know everyone in the room, but do we have anyone either in the room or online from Finland? Ah, lovely.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So Heidi Laine from Finland, IT Center for Science, CS. We are, our organizational form is a private company, but we are publicly owned by the Finnish state and the Finnish higher education institutions. And we're kind of the Swiss knife of national IT services for science. So we're the National Supercomputing Center, we're a network provider, and we also provide these national research data management services. We don't have domain-specific services, so mostly generic, but also specialized services for sensitive data have been a big priority recently. So maybe that's enough as an introduction from us. But yeah, very interested to be part of this group.
Thank you very much, and good to meet you. And Francois, we are now up to France.
Gilles will speak.
Yes, can you hear me well? Yes.
Yes, indeed, we can.
Okay, yeah, good. Okay. So thank you, Françoise. Indeed, Françoise is our flagship for this, but I'm here representing the French ecosystem Recherche Data Group, which is a national data service, at least in the sense that we understood from it. Well, the key thing for us is that we're relatively new in the landscape, in the sense that it's Recherche Data Group exists for only 2 years. And when it was created, it got inspired by a lot of national data services which are in the room now. So we got inspiration from colleagues across the world. And there's an interesting thing in that it was very useful to get this feedback, to get information on how other countries were organized, how they managed to fit the landscape with the organization they put in place for the National Data Service. And now that we are established and working, I think this is something we want to transmit also to the potential national data services, which are not in the room yet because they don't exist. And what does that mean to build a national data service? What is required? What can you do? What should you not do because it doesn't work? What should you expect? And there's a lot of things that we could bring as a discussion, not as out-of-the-box solutions, but just sharing amongst us on what does work, what does not work, of course, according also to the specificities of each of our respective countries. And yeah, so also there's a kind of a background question there, which is, can we try and solve together in the same way different problems? Because France is not organized the way Australia is organized, the way Canada is organized, the way Germany is organized. And of course, there's no one-size-fits-all solution for a national data service. But still, the key thing is data and how we handle this and how we provide services to users. So what are the things we can group together? What are the things we have to separate because they will be handled differently? And this is all this kind of questions, which is of interest for us, and that pushes us to be part of this group.
Wonderful. So that's really speaking to the comments in the statement of work in the Charter for new NDS systems to benefit from the learnings in the group, but indeed for all of us to bring together challenges and say, help, how do we solve this? I think that's a wonderful thing. Now, continuing down my list, I have NFDI next, and I looking for one of the three hands to go up here. But what I put... What I'd particularly like to ask you to comment on is what you think would be necessary addressing some of the needs that were raised in yesterday's BOF as well, and what would you like to see in this one?
What are the needs? I think for us the most interesting thing is just to know what other people are doing, what kind of synergies we can find, what kind of experience exchange we can make. So as a whole, the NFTI, like we don't have like pressing issues. Like we definitely need a pit strategy. We're working on that stuff already. But one of the requirements from our funders is that we have strong international integration, which makes sense, of course, because Germany is relatively small. And so having this group and having a strong international network to see what we're doing, what probably someone else is also doing, which we don't know about. That is for us, I think, the most important thing to really, get out the synergies of working together.
And Lisa, Julia, anything to add there?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just because we had this BOF session that you were talking about yesterday. And so for us also, let's say the social aspect would be very important. So we are a bottom-up approach. So there are like 26 different consortia coming together in the NFDI. They all work on different different scientific disciplines, and we have a great bunch of people who all came together for doing RDM out of their disciplines. And for us, it's really good to share maybe and also learn from others how the others approach the challenge of, let's say, getting the right people together to making RDM work across all scientific disciplines. And I think we can learn a lot from this, from data services that are centralized, because we are decentralized, right? And this is something that we can put into this discussion as well. Yeah.
Okay. 次はMikiko-sanですね。
I was not expecting. I'm Mikiko Tanifuji from National Institute of Informatics, and so-called NII is only one of research data or research infrastructure service organization fully funded by government. Now, in our concern / my own concern is even PIT's level of, to be fair, there are lots of issues to globalize the local PITS system. So we have local PITS system, but it is not global accessible PITS. So there's a significant differences in meaning of what level of information or metadata you wish to be searched or navigate to the source of the data. So that's depending on the research domains. Therefore, NII provide nearly 30 research projects every year for 5 years for each, to demonstrate the practicality of, for example, PITS issue, and also data description as a so-called metadata, etc., etc. So NII is not data provider. We are infrastructure provider, but we work together with research communities by funded 20 or 30 projects. And we are also working with several funding agencies to be able to share the PIT system, for example, to be searchable or identifiable. But this is this year project, and it's going to be released next year because we made a policy of immediate open access mandatory to public funded research from 2025. So we are extremely in a sort of highly stressed moment, but wish to share and learn with other national data infrastructure / data service if it's possible. I learned a lot from Founders Forum day before yesterday, I think. And I do see that national level is often quite close to what we concern, but often not the solution to solve the problem. So for that level, that would be very useful to us.
Domo. Now, continuing down my list of countries, the next step I head to is actually the Netherlands. And so your timing, Ingrid, is absolutely perfect. And if I have missed anyone on the way through, I will circle back at the end so no one escapes.
Would be nice to then know the question that I'm asked, except for the Netherlands.
So really, it's just an intro. The National Data Services from your region and just a couple of words.
Okay, here we go. So I think in the Netherlands at the moment we have a kind of federated national data infrastructure consisting of, you could say, maybe different layers. So we have about 4 organizations with a really national remit that are complementary to each other. So we have SURF, which is our national NREN. We have DANS, my organization, which is a national data archive and center of expertise in the area of research data management. We have the Netherlands eScience Center, which focuses on software. So in that sense, we have a couple of institutions that really cover a large part of the data infrastructure on a national level. Around that, we have a circle of what we call digital competence centers that are local. So these competence centers are based in our universities, and we as national organizations also have strong links with these local data centers. And you can see that as a kind of a back office, front office division of work and division of responsibilities. And these local digital competence centers also received national funding from our government to be set up in the different unis. In the end, of course, they need to find their own structural funding to continue that. It's only money, seed funding in that sense. And then finally, since a couple of years, the government is also funding what we call thematic digital competence centers. So that is another way of dividing the cake. So we have one for the life and health sciences, one for the social sciences and humanities, and one for the technical and engineering sciences. So it's quite a complicated model, but and it's still in its build-up phase, but we have a feeling that we're on the right way. What we are also momentarily, of course, thinking about in the Netherlands is what we will do in the context of the European Open Science Cloud, our European context. So that offers, in a way, a new layer of complexity, but also a new chance to look with fresh eyes to what we have now in the Netherlands and see how we can also make it compatible with what is happening in Europe.
Thank you. I learned from that. I probably should know, but I learned from that. So that's great. But I also think bringing out the EOSC for us that aren't in Europe, we're still really interested. Your nods there are interesting, Juan. I don't know, do we have anyone representing the South African data infrastructure that I don't know? They're on the list here. Nobody online? So that's just one group that hasn't been able to join us today. The next is UK. Yeah. I really am going to get my steps here.
Thanks, Rosie. So we've got a relatively new, fairly big program in the UK that we call Digital Research Infrastructure. And it's organized thematically, a bit like the NFDI. So there are maybe about a dozen significant projects building up data infrastructure, data services in different domains. I'm leading the one in physical sciences, which is chemistry and materials, not high energy physics. So I'd like to participate with that hat on, and I can also sort of represent the bigger program as well, because I'm quite involved in that. So yeah, that's relatively new in the UK. They're sort of up and running about now. So over the next few years, I think they'll become a real thing.
Thank you. Now that gets to the list, at the end of the list that we have in the collaboration notes. But I'm aware that not everyone has spoken, and I don't know everyone in the room or online. So perhaps if we can start by going online first, is there anyone there that we've missed and would like to tell us about the national data service that they work with or is within their own country? Any volunteers there? Or you feel you're all covered?
We did have a question online about where EOSC fits in all of this. So how does it fit in the context of the NDSs? And the question is specifically like, do other European NDSs work towards the EOSC? Or I guess what is the relationship there? So I don't know if there's anyone in the room or online who could speak to that.
Well, I can start from the Finnish perspective. So for us, EOSC is critical, and but of course there's a lot of moving parts at the moment. The federation is being built, and the handbook which will define what an EOSC node is still being drafted, but we are looking to have a national EOSC node, and that would likely be hosted by CSC. So maybe in a nutshell, that's where we stand. So yeah.
Well, let's try. So the European Open Science Cloud, of course, is a vision, is an ambition that was already formulated, I think, back in 2016 or something. So we have talked a lot about what it could be and what it could be good for and how we should create it many, many years. But I have the feeling that now we are really in the phase where implementation is starting to happen. So the idea now is that we have in Europe a federation of what we call EOSC nodes. And the EOSC nodes can be on a European level, on a national level, on a regional level in a country, or even on an institutional level. So it can have all kinds of shapes and offering services to the European community as well as using services from that community. Can be both technical services, but training, community building. A couple of weeks ago at the EOSC symposium, the EU online available, that is the node that provides basic services and is funded by the European Commission. So that is EU money. Of course, if you say we want a federation of nodes, we also need other nodes, and that is now in the startup phase. So there is a lot of discussion in Europe about what should such nodes look like, what would be the requirements, what could be a governance model for all of this, and a business model, of course, because all of these nodes are not getting European funding. It needs to be funded on a national or institutional level. So how are we going to make that work? So you can imagine that in all the member states in Europe, everybody is thinking hard and deep of how we can connect to that system that is now emerging. And I think you will see that in different countries, the solutions will also be different. For example, in Finland, where there is one strong, very big central institute like CSC, it is quite natural that CSC will be, I imagine, an EOSC national node. In the Netherlands, we are much more scattered and federated. So we are having national discussions now with the different institutions around how we relate to this upcoming situation. And I think the result of that will be that in the Netherlands, we will have multiple nodes. So it's a landscape that is arising. The clear vision is maybe there, but the implementation not yet. But it is something that I think keeps everybody busy in the different member states. How do we make this happen?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask a follow-up to Ingrid. I don't want to get too far off topic, but I'm guessing the answer to this is no, but has there been any discussion of the EOSC opening to other members of Horizon Europe, because the link there is so clear? As a recently departed European in a country that is part of Horizon Europe, I just wonder if you've ever heard that come up, because you gave a very succinct overview of something that I don't think is still yet as succinct as you sounded. But you've heard that? Oh, sorry. Okay, I won't follow up.
Disclaimer, I'm not the EOS expert, maybe in the room, but certainly not outside of this room. So I think not. I think it's very much inward looking still. We have in RDA, of course, the whole GORC discussion. I see that not so much reflected within the discussions in EOSC itself. So we're still trying to find, to figure out what we do internally. And of course, everybody says we need to make sure that this also connects to other parts of the world. So also, of course, the European countries outside of the member states, but it's not really at the top of the agenda, as far as I know.
And throwing to online, we have a hand up there. I can't actually read who it is, sorry.
Yep, that's probably me. I don't see any other hand.
Go for it.
Yeah, Gilles speaking. So just to share with you my personal view on where does the EOSC fit in the NDS landscape in RDA. To me, it's a question of scale as well, in the sense that we've got here with the EOSC a continental initiative, and we could say that's a kind of concentric circles. I mean, like, we're working at the national level, then obviously the first level of collaboration is with our neighbors. So it's kind of normal that the start is at the continental level with the national data services, which are close to us in terms of the research landscape, in the terms of the geographical landscape as well, and then getting to some level of harmonization and discussion on different aspects in the EOSC context is a first circle. And now, of course, if we want to extend and go beyond, again, what we are working on the EOSC level, the ODA and the NDS group would be the forum for it. But I guess Françoise might complete on that, but the idea was to involve also representatives from EOSC in the discussion, and also from the other initiatives in the other continents, if there are any, just to make sure that this discussion is not just national data services talking to each other, but also kind of groups of national data services that have common interests talking to each other. And then there's a question of, I don't know how you call it, matryoshka thing, that you can have services into services into services, and then you can break down, but then this facilitates the discussion if you've got some kind of groupings that can interact with one another.
Francois, I don't know if you want to respond to that, but maybe, so I also have a question in the room here, if you want to collect your thoughts.
I think that we discussed this kind of topic with La Referencia in the first BOF in particular, and we think that it will be useful to have a liaison with EOSC and other regional initiatives. So the answer is yes. And in any case, in RDA, this is an open game we are playing. And it's important that we speak with all the parties which are relevant. And EOSC is obviously relevant.
Yeah, I just want to jump back briefly to Natalie's question, because I just picked it up. Legal status required for an EOSC node is the organization responsible must be a public benefit legal entity for now located in EU member states or an associated country with legal personality, full capacity, blah, 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 or an intergovernmental research organization of European interest.
And that, yeah, that. Natalie, I'm just conscious you don't have the microphone, so I'm repeating what or an associated member country, I think was the comment we were in danger of losing. The other area that has come up and we haven't heard from today, is there anyone here from La Referencia? No, so that's a couple that we're missing from today's discussion. And before I move on to the next bit, two things. Have I missed anything online that we need to catch, Lee? No, all good. And not everyone in the room has had the opportunity to speak yet. Would you like me to come and hover at you with the microphone so you can introduce yourself? Because you did catch my eye. No. Ming, here you go.
Well, my comment probably is more at the granular level because they are in the slides and in your statement of work also asking about how to listen to potential user and create a service accordingly to their needs. So I'm wearing the hat of the co-chair of RDA Data Discovery Paradigms Interest Group, and my co-chair Bridget also here. So our group is unique in the sense that we have breadth of skills, people doing this kind of user study, doing survey, doing interviews. We produce those research independently produce lots of resources, how users, why do they search data, where do they search data, how do they search data, and how they are going to use the search data. So that will impact on the service we create a lot here. So our group are very happy to contribute to this kind of topic in this group. Thank you.
Thanks, Ming. That's great. Thanks, Bridget. So I think in a way you're actually leading us on to the next part of the conversation, if I have no other volunteers for the microphone just yet. So going back to the statement of work or the things that we're seeking to cover, would anyone like to comment on what's in the slides or what Francois has presented today? It might be either that we've missed something completely, or you would like to prioritize or emphasize the importance of something in your particular sphere. So any comments there? Otherwise, Francois, I think you've just done an amazing piece of work because everybody agrees and they're very quiet. And I think it might be last night's conference dinner. We're all happy.
So if
Excellent.
everybody is happy, I may insist on the fact that we need people to do the work.
Yeah, I think, oh, hang on, just dodging that really quickly. We have Matthew. So, it looks like you were.
No, I just wanted to make the point, because one of your slides, there was this question around, do we stay at the national level? Do we look at domain specific? Do we? And one of the challenges I sometimes find about the interest groups, working groups that I've been a part of is it remains very general. But the work that needs to be done or the thinking is often more specific that needs to happen. And so I would just say, encourage the group to not shy away from the need to also address very specific issues, whether it's disciplinary specific or whatever it might be. And because I think it's the real concrete value that will keep a group like this going. If people see, yes, people come and the engagement's super important, But at the end of the day, it's also really important to see we're getting, and I know this isn't a working group, but something concrete, we're advancing something, we're moving in the right direction, in addition to the engagement importance and connecting importance. And maybe those concrete pieces are going to be at the intersection of different groups, not just this group. But I just want to put that on the table, is to think also as concretely as we can when we're trying to bring up particular issues to address in advance.
So, Matthew, maybe this goes with the fact that there could be or there should be meetings on specific topics to gather contributions from the participants. And so the point is to define the topics, but it's a suggestions on the kind of meetings the group could organize, I think.
Thank you, Francois. And I think that one of the things we have seen really clearly is this is a starting point. It's fantastic to come together and get to know each other. And really, that's one of the things that the plenaries do so very well. But to build trust and to ensure that we're looking at data in a particular context, and addressing those challenges is something that I was highlighting yesterday in our cross-domain collaboration, of that sense of shared purpose in a particular conversation can advance the depth of the relationship very quickly. So one of the things, and I'm not proposing we do it right now, but looking at particular areas for discussion to form the basis for the meetings that Francois is discussing would be very, very helpful. Now, we do have just 15 minutes left, and I do think Francois' suggestion is an excellent one. This is where the rubber meets the road, and we're encouraging you to go to the collaboration document and looking for people to volunteer to join the statement of work preparation. People interested to participate in identification of relevant RDA groups. And I think that's quite straightforward. We've had some really strong, that's not onerous, absolutely critical, but not onerous. So you can do that pretty quickly, can't you, Natalie? Yeah, yeah, great. Put your name in there. Okay, and I think this is a big one. Interested to participate in the work on an NDS GORC profile, and we might be coming back to the identification of people interested in participating in the joint task force between these two different groups. So I think just really encouraging people, and I'm actually going to pause for a moment. I'm going to leave an awkward pause to give you an opportunity to put your names down. Does that sound good? And I can have a sip of water. And just because I'm not sat down, none of the ARDC folk can dob me in. I think another really important question, and we don't have a column for this here, but I will say, as Francois mentioned at the beginning, we do want co-chairs from 3 different continents. I'm not one of them, just telling you that now. My cup overfloweth. And I think we've got the same message from Lee. He's a bit more... I wouldn't say that now, you'd be done for. So yes, anyone that is interested in being a co-chair for the group, now would be a wonderful time to say so. Yay!
So, Rosie, who volunteered? Because it's not easy to see
Francois.
from here. Yes.
Francois, he's getting the microphone right now.
Thank you. Because we don't see the person here from here.
Bonsoir, Françoise.
Oh,
I
parfait,
hope you're well.
parfait.
Yes, happy to put my hand up, but I will have an internal discussion in ARDC with Andrew Trelaw, who's doing a lot on the GORC interest group, and we'll just make sure it's all neatly lined up. So, yes.
So, if I can put TBC in the meeting notes, you already write it, something about to be confirmed, but I put Keith TBC in the meeting notes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Keith. That's great. So that's one continent. Lee?
This is funny. Okay, from Natalie. Francois, are you one of the co-chairs?
I was not planning to. I can help to start. But don't forget that I am supposed to be retired. So I can help to look forward, but maybe not take that one. If it is necessary to help at the beginning, I can do it, but it will not be on many years, I would say. I will not retire now. It's not the point, but it's just to avoid, in French, we would say put more things on my boat, the barque. Charger la barque, non merci.
Natalie, that was an excellent question. So, Francois, we're extremely grateful for your support and guidance, but completely appreciate that you're pretending to retire, failing, but pretending. So what that means is we do need a European co-chair, and I am lurking with my friends.
So I raised the hand then for the NFDI. Maybe it will not be me personally, but we will figure out who from the NFDI will do the co-chairing here, because we think it's very important. And yeah, it's just as Lisa and Brigitte said, we will learn a lot from that, and we will also bring a lot. So yeah.
Go for it. I think that's absolutely a round of applause, but I think it's a great result because of the work that we were doing yesterday and looking at that aspect of cross-domain collaboration. Yeah. Okay, right. I'm sure, I'm looking over to Finland, you're very welcome. We can have more than one. I just wasn't letting them off the hook. But if I need my third continent, yay! Another round. Oh, hang on. Oh, we've look, this is marvelous. How many mornings do you get your 3 new co-chairs sorted out? I think this is going really well. No, we'll put Canada, person TBC, NFDI, person TBC, ARDC, probably Keith, possibly Andrew. Yeah. Well, I think that it just depends. There's a lot of heavy lifting in different groups going on, so we'll see where that lands. All right. So we must be approaching the end. We can do a. What does a wrap up mean? Does it mean I give you the mic? Excellent. Yay.
Thank you. Okay, well, I'll keep this brief, so maybe we can get to lunch early and beat the line. Thank you so much, Rosie, for facilitating that discussion. Thank you so much, Francois, for all the cat herding that you've done to put this session together, and for the first BOF as well. Much appreciated. Thanks to everyone in the room. Fantastic discussion. Thanks to everybody online. And thank you to the technical team for facilitating this great session. So thanks, everybody.